The barn had been converted with surgical precision. Every beam bore the patina of manufactured authenticity, distressed by machine, stained to suggest decades of weather that had never touched them. Claire recognized the aesthetic immediately. It was the same logic that governed David's family home, the inherited furniture maintained by professionals, the casual garden designed by a firm in Boston, the kitchen that looked farmhouse, rustic because a designer had specified reclaimed wood at $80 per square foot. She stood near the entrance, watching the room fill with people who knew how to occupy space without questioning their right to it. The Whitmores had invited 60 guests, a number Claire understood to be strategic, large enough to demonstrate social capital, small enough to maintain exclusivity. She had helped David address the envelopes, had seen the names board members, legacy families, 2 city councilors, the publisher of the regional newspaper. Her parents arrived at 6:47, 7 minutes past the invitation's suggested time. Claire saw them through the window, paused at the door of their 11-year-old Camry, her father adjusting his tie in the side mirror. The suit was navy, purchased for her grandmother's funeral in 2009. He had gained weight since then lost it, and the fabric now hung with the particular drape of clothing that had been taken in, then let out, then taken in again. Her mother's dress was charcoal, selected from a rack where the original prices had been crossed out and replaced with red stickers. Claire knew this because she had been there, had watched her mother hold the fabric to the light in the dressing room, checking for the sheen that betrayed synthetic content. They entered with the hesitation of people who had learned to measure their welcome in microseconds. Her father's hand found the small of her mother's back, a gesture Claire recognized from childhood. The physical translation of "we are together in this, whatever this is." David appeared at her elbow, smelling of the cologne his mother had given him, the one Claire associated with his father's study. "They made it," he said, with the satisfaction of someone confirming a delivery. "I told Mom they would." Claire turned to look at him. They had been together 3 years. She knew the specific cadence of his voice when he was performing optimism for her benefit, the slight elevation in pitch that suggested he was monitoring his own delivery. "Where are they sitting?" "Table 12. Near the kitchen." He said this without embarrassment, as though proximity to service infrastructure were a neutral fact. "Mom thought they'd be more comfortable there. Less pressure." Claire nodded. She had learned to nod in these moments, to let information accumulate without immediate response. The strategy had developed over years of translation. Her father's job as machine operator, becoming manufacturing specialist. When she introduced him to college friends, her mother's work as house cleaner, becoming domestic services, on the rare forms that ask. She understood that the Whitmores were not inventing new hierarchies. They were simply executing existing ones with professional thoroughness. She watched her parents navigate the room. Her father shook hands with excessive warmth, the enthusiasm that read as desperation to people who had never needed to prove their goodwill. Her mother complimented the floral arrangements with specific observations. "The amaranth is such an interesting choice, so architectural," revealing the hours she had spent studying magazines, preparing to perform competence in a language she had learned secondhand. "Claire." David's mother materialized at her side, carrying the authority of someone who had never been asked to leave a room. Eleanor Whitmore wore cream linen that managed to suggest both effortlessness and expense. "The caterer needs a final count. Are your parents staying for the full evening?" The question was grammatically innocent. Claire heard the subtext. Do they understand the duration of these events? Will they require early extraction? "They'll stay," she said. "They drove 3 hours, of course." Eleanor's smile included her teeth but not her eyes, a distinction Claire had learned to read. "I just thought, the drive back, the hotel, they might prefer to skip the dancing. The music can be overwhelming for people who aren't used to." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Claire watched her gaze track toward table 12, where her parents were settling into chairs that faced the kitchen swing door. The positioning was masterful, close enough to claim inclusion, configured to ensure their marginalization. Each time the door opened, steam and noise and the mechanical clatter of service would interrupt whatever conversation they managed to begin. "I'll check on them," Claire said. She moved through the room with the peripheral vision she had developed in childhood, the ability to navigate spaces while monitoring her parents' position within them. She passed table 3, where 3 men in similar suits discussed municipal contracts with the relaxed confidence of people who had known each other since prep school. She passed table 7, her own assignment, close to the couple. The place card had read, a bribe of proximity that felt now like separation payment. Table 12 was positioned where the barn's original architecture created a natural alcove, a space that would have stored equipment in the building's functional past. Her father stood as she approached, a habit from his own father's generation, the automatic deference that announced his origins more clearly than any accent. Claire Bear. He used the childhood name without self-consciousness, unaware or unconcerned that it marked him as foreign to this room. "This is something, isn't it?" "The beams. Real hand, hewn. They're distressed," Claire said. "Machine, distressed. The originals were replaced in the renovation." Her father's face performed a quick adjustment, the suppression of disappointment she recognized from 1,000 similar corrections. "Still. Nice effect." Her mother was studying the menu card with the intensity of someone preparing for examination. "Beef tenderloin or pan-seared halibut." David's mother said the beef is local. "From that farm with the store on Route 9. The Whitmores own a share," Claire said. "They have a stake in the processing facility." Her mother set down the card. The carried weight Claire chose not to unpack. They had driven past that farm for years, had watched the price of local beef rise beyond their reach, had understood without discussion that certain economies operated on scales other than money. The kitchen door swung open, releasing a burst of steam and the clatter of plates. A server emerged, navigating the narrow passage with practiced efficiency. Claire watched her father's shoulders tense, the automatic compression of someone accustomed to making himself smaller in industrial spaces. "I'll talk to Eleanor," Claire said. "About moving you?" "No." Her mother's voice was firm, the tone she used when Claire, at 16, had wanted to confront a teacher about a grade. "We're fine here. We can see everything. The cake. When they bring it out, we'll have the best view." She was lying. They all knew she was lying. Claire recognized the specific quality of her mother's performance, gratitude too enthusiastic, accommodation too complete. She had seen it in clients' houses. The women who apologized for the state of their homes, while her mother cleaned around them. The automatic deference that attempted to purchase dignity through demonstrated humility. "I'll check back," Claire said. She did not go to Eleanor. She went to the bar, then the restroom, then the coat check, gathering evidence through orbit rather than confrontation. She had learned this strategy in high school, when direct objection had resulted in escalated humiliation, when the only power available was the power of observation, of knowing more than you revealed. Near the dessert station, she heard Eleanor explaining the seating to a board member from the hospital foundations. "The Chen family prefers quieter spaces. They're not used to large gatherings." She heard David, near the fireplace, telling his college roommate. "Her parents are sweet, but they get overwhelmed. Mom's just trying to make them comfortable." The translations were familiar. Claire had performed them herself for years. "My father works with his hands, becoming my father runs a small manufacturing business. My mother cleans houses, becoming my mother is in domestic services." Very flexible schedule. She understood that the Whitmores were executing a standard protocol. The innovation was not in the cruelty, but in the efficiency, the seamless integration of exclusion into the architecture of hospitality. She returned to table 7 as the toasts began. David's father spoke first, managing to reference 3 generations of Whitmore construction projects without apparent bragging. A college friend of David's offered irony as humor, jokes about settling down, that assumed everyone present had experienced the alternative. Claire watched her parents from her peripheral vision, saw her father holding his wine glass with the careful grip of someone unaccustomed to stemware. Saw her mother applauding at moments slightly delayed from the main group's rhythm. The evening proceeded through its required movements. Claire moved when expected, standing for photos, accepting congratulations, performing the role of bride, to be with the competence she had developed in professional settings. She noted the distance between herself and David without feeling it yet. Observation preceded emotion. This was her survival pattern, the delay that allowed her to function in spaces that required translation. She thought of her father's hands. She had watched them throughout her childhood. The precision with which he calibrated machines to thousandths of an inch, the scar tissue accumulated from 30 years of metal and torque, and the particular violence of industrial process. Those hands were currently wrapped around a wine glass, performing delicacy they had never needed to learn. The turning point arrived without announcement. Her father stood, not dramatically, simply to use the restroom. He moved past table 3 with the unconscious efficiency of someone accustomed to navigating factory floors, aware of spatial dynamics without conscious calculation. As he passed, a voice from the table carried, "Wonder what they paid to get in here." Claire saw her father's pause. A half-second, barely perceptible. She had seen this pause before when a customer at the plant questioned a quote, when a bank manager reviewed their mortgage application, when David first asked what her parents did, and she felt the familiar compression of translation. The pause was her father's language, the moment of processing before response. But he did not sit back down. He did not continue to the restroom. He turned, instead, toward the coat check. Claire watched him return with his phone, the old model, physical buttons, the device the Whitmores had found charming. In their condescension, he did not return to table 12. He approached table 3, but not the Whitmores' circle. He approached the 3 men in suits who had been discussing municipal contracts all evening. "Mr. Patterson," her father said. Claire recognized the name. Patterson Development. The company bidding against Whitmore Construction for the waterfront project. The contract worth $40 million. The decision pending next Tuesday's council vote. She had heard David and his father discussing it last month, the anxiety in their voices when they mentioned Patterson's unfair advantage, their speculation about technical irregularities in the bid specifications. Patterson stood. The handshake that followed lasted 3 seconds too long. The duration of recognition between people who had done business without social intimacy. The conversation that followed, quiet, technical, referencing that specification issue you mentioned in October, excluded everyone within listening distance. Claire watched her father's hands as he spoke, the gestures returning to their natural vocabulary, the technical precision of someone explaining torque tolerances to an audience that required accuracy. She watched Mrs. Whitmore's face perform calculations she was not prepared to make. The shift was not announced. It accumulated. Patterson introduced her father to his wife. A chair was found, table 3, between Patterson and the city comptroller. Her mother was retrieved from table 12 with apologies that arrived too late to matter, delivered by a server rather than Eleanor herself. The kitchen door became irrelevant. Claire learned what she had not known. Her father had consulted on Patterson's machinery standards for 18 months. His expertise, unsexy, unfashionable, the kind that left permanent oil stains under fingernails, had shaped the technical requirements that now favored Patterson's bid. The specifications David's family had cursed were specifications her father had written. translating decades of shop floor knowledge into the language of municipal procurement. The reversal was not dramatic. It was material. The Whitmores' rustic barn, aesthetic, their board memberships, their seating charts, all of it operated within a game whose rules her father had helped write without her knowledge. Eleanor approached with fresh champagne, her smile recalibrated to a different frequency. We were just saying how wonderful it is to have such diverse backgrounds represented. Mr. Chen, I didn't realize you were connected to the Patterson project. Her father accepted the glass. He did not drink from it. He continued his conversation about load, bearing tolerances and equipment specifications, the language that had purchased his presence in this room more legitimately than any invitation. Claire watched him navigate the transition without visible transition, the same competence he brought to machine calibration applied to social machinery. She found David near the bar, his face assembling explanations. I didn't know, he began. I would have said something. They're not bad people, Claire. They just didn't know. They knew, Claire said. She found she did not need to hear his continued defense. The engagement would continue or it would not. That decision belonged to a different category than the one resolved tonight. They knew exactly what they were doing. They just didn't know what he knew. Her parents left at 9:30. Long drive, her father said, though they were staying at a hotel 20 minutes away. Claire walked them to their car, the parking lot gravel crunching under shoes that had never been designed for outdoor use. Her father's hands, in the security light, showed the permanent stains that no solvent removed. Her mother's dress had relaxed, she no longer performed. They stood by the Camry with the ease of people who had returned to their native gravity. You could have told me, Claire said. Her father shrugged. The gesture carried decades of calculation. Didn't know if it mattered. Didn't know if I wanted it to. He unlocked the car, the mechanical clunk of the old system. Patterson asked me to consult. I needed the work. Didn't think about what it meant, not until tonight, not until I saw where they put your mother. He paused, his hand on the door handle. I wasn't going to say anything. Wasn't going to give them that. But then that comment. He stopped. He didn't need to finish. Claire understood the comment had been a gift, permission to deploy knowledge he had held in reserve. Are you staying? Her mother asked. For the dancing. I'll be back soon, Claire said. She didn't know if this was true. She didn't need to know yet. She returned to the barn. David was waiting near their table, his face still assembling explanations she didn't require. She sat at table 7, her assigned place, and watched the room continue its performance. Eleanor Whitmore circulated with renewed vigilance, her social calculations, now including a variable she had not prepared for. The music started, something designed to suggest rustic authenticity through digital production. Claire understood, finally, that her father had been teaching her this lesson for years. Not how to pass. How to survive passing without believing in it. The victory was not in Eleanor's discomfort, though that was present, visible in the tightness around her eyes as she monitored the Patterson table. The victory was in her father's choice to hold his knowledge quietly, to deploy it only when the architecture of the room required demolition. To leave without claiming the space he had earned.